guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Beninin, and for today's video we're going to be doing another sunscreen review. We are talking about a sunscreen that I reviewed way back in the day. I reviewed a sunscreen 2 years ago that to this day people are still commenting, do you still like this sunscreen? What do you think about this sunscreen? You still wearing this sunscreen? Today we're talking about a sunscreen from the brand COTZ, and I had already reviewed the sunscreen 2 years ago, but at the time they only had this tinted sunscreen in one shade, and the shade was questionable. For me, it worked, but for a lot of people, they said that they still had a white cast. COTZ recently released Flawless Complexion Sunscreen in a richly tinted version. So it's the same Flawless Complexion SPF 50, but now you get it in a tint that is supposed to be suitable for medium to dark skin tones. Before we get into like the ingredients, the formulation, does it have a white cast, I just want to give a quick caveat. I have changed since I made that video. 2 years ago, me had sort of a different preference when it came to sunscreen, so that obviously changed the way that I would rate and review a sunscreen. My skin has changed, my preferences have changed. I think I've become a lot more picky when it comes to sunscreens and mineral sunscreens in general. So keep that in mind if you have already watched that video or you go back to watch that video and I may say something slightly different. Since then, I've reviewed a lot of different sunscreens, so I think I have a better idea of what works for my skin and what I like now than I did back then when I was just desperate to find a mineral sunscreen that looked okay. Okay, so let's jump right into it. It's 2.5 fluid ounces, and I got mine directly from COTZ's website where it was retailing for $27.50. You can also get it at Ulta. Typically, they're not very good about keeping it stocked like in person if you go into a store, but if you order it on the Ulta's website online, I seem to have better luck seeing it on there. The active ingredient is zinc oxide 20%, making this an all mineral sunscreen. They claim that this is a sheer tint that works with your skin tone. They claim that it's non-comedogenic. It's supposed to be a lightweight tinted cream that is specifically designed to vanish on medium to dark skin tones, leaving no white cast. So right on there, COTZ is making some very bold claims. We'll see if it lives up to it. And it says on the website that it's ideal for all skin types, even sensitive, dry, or breakout prone skin. So those are some of their claims. So I'm just gonna put a little bit on the back of my hand. It's definitely a darker tint than the original one. The texture is definitely a rich cream. I do find that although it looks a little bit pasty and heavy on here, on my skin, it feels pretty lightweight personally. To me, it feels a little bit more like makeup than it does like sunscreen. It does leave more of a glowy finish. I'd say that it's natural to kind of dewy. I tested this one out on bare skin with a moisturizer and with makeup. Day one, when I wore this one on bare skin, it initially, when I first put it on, I was like, I don't know. The tint is not looking perfect to me, but after you rub it in, you spread it out, you give it a minute, it actually looks pretty good. So by the time I rubbed it in, it basically vanished, which I was shocked, okay? Because the original tint took a little while for it to vanish, whereas this one, when I rubbed it in completely, there was nothing there. It did require a little bit of work to rub it in, but it did spread out pretty easily and it settled in pretty quickly as well. When I wore it in window lighting, as you can see, it looks really good. There is no cast. There's a bit of a glow, a bit of a sheen to it, but it wasn't feeling heavy at this point. After wearing it 2 hours though, I was looking a bit shiny, and keep in mind, right now I'm living in a warmer climate. We're in the middle of summer. It's a little bit humid outside, and I did go outside, and it's just hot. So I'm gonna be a little bit more oily, but I do think that after 2 hours, it was a bit more glowy than I would like personally, but it was bearable. I went ahead and blotted and reapplied, and I don't know about the reapplication. In general, with mineral sunscreens, I do think once you add more than one layer of the sunscreen, it starts to show up a bit more and it starts to feel a little bit more heavy and cakey. A tinted mineral sunscreen is basically makeup in my opinion, so if you're putting layers and layers of makeup on, it's gonna feel heavier. But actually the cast wasn't that bad. You can see a slight bit of a cast on my forehead where I felt like it didn't fully vanish this time, but if you're looking at my cheeks and my chin and the rest of my face, you really don't see a cast whatsoever. So personally, I don't think I would reapply with this sunscreen, and I don't reapply with most mineral sunscreens, just as a personal preference. I will just use a different product for that. And then with the second application, it felt a little bit shinier again, a little bit more heavy, and this time I didn't feel like it was fully drying down as well. So reapplication was just kind of meh. Day 2, I wore it with a moisturizer, and I was not a fan of wearing this one with moisturizer. It works fine on its own. You don't need to put other products underneath. It was just a bit too glowy for me with the moisturizer, and it felt a little bit more greasy with having the moisturizer as well. It didn't interact with the product or become pilly or like moving around or anything like that, but it just didn't feel or look the way that I would like it. But if you're really, really dry, I guess you could put a moisturizer underneath, but I don't think it's really necessary with this sunscreen. After wearing it for 2 hours with the moisturizer, coming back, I look very shiny, which is expected because the sunscreen is already glowy, and then I'm adding the moisturizer, and then I'm adding the heat and the humidity on top of that, so it felt a little bit gross to me. And then the last day, I wore it with makeup, and you guys know my makeup preference is like a little bit of concealer, some powder, a bronzer, and then call it a day as far as my face. I'm not really putting on a foundation. It worked and it looked pretty good. I do want to say that because the sunscreen leans more glowy or dewy, my makeup looked glowy and dewy, and that's not really my preference per se. I like to start out a little bit more matte or a little bit more balanced, but the dew actually didn't look that bad. It looked okay. I would just have to go in and put a little bit more powder, maybe a setting spray to get it to the finish that I want. But it did sit nicely underneath, and it didn't feel really heavy with putting other makeup products on my face. I think if you are someone that puts more of a full face of makeup on, so you're wearing more foundation, I don't think you'll really like this one underneath makeup. It's gonna feel like a little bit too much, like too many layers. So really, I'd say if your makeup is light, then it should work with the sunscreen, but if your makeup is heavy, I'd find an alternate sunscreen to wear underneath. Okay, so as far as who I would recommend this sunscreen for, when it comes to the finish, the difference between the richly tinted and the lightly tinted is the same. There's no difference. The finish is gonna give you that glowier, more dewy finish. If you want a more natural finish, you might have to put more of a powder on it. But the Flawless Complexion in general is just one that I reach for more in the winter months than the summer. It gives me enough moisture, it doesn't irritate my skin, it works great in the winter for me. But in the summer, it's a little bit too shiny for me and just not one that I would reach for in the summer. If you have more dry skin, you would probably be able to get away with wearing this one in the summer if you just wore it on its own. If you have acne prone skin, I didn't have any breakouts with this one. I've been having breakouts with the last couple sunscreens I've been reviewing, so it was just nice to try a product that didn't cause any breakouts or irritation for me for my sensitive acne prone skin. So this one didn't necessarily cause me any acne, but in the past, when I tried the lightly tinted version, I had to be careful with the way that I removed the sunscreen, and I had to be very intentional about double cleansing and washing it off really good at night. If you are someone that skips some of those steps at night and you don't fully cleanse your skin, this one might be pore clogging for you. You might find that it is staying because it takes a bit to kind of wash it off. So I just want to put that out there, but I really didn't have any issues with it, and I haven't had issues with it if I double cleanse with like a cleansing balm and a face wash at night. This one does not irritate my eyes, no stinging whatsoever. I didn't feel like it was moving into my eyes, no burning, no redness. So obviously things like sensitivity, acne, eye stinging, are all gonna be very subjective and dependent on who's wearing it. So just because I didn't have issues with that doesn't mean that you won't. But for me, it worked out. This one does not have a white cast. I was so excited when I put it on and it like disappeared, because as you guys know, finding a mineral sunscreen that has no white cast if you have a darker skin tone, it's like impossible. As far as the lighter tint that I had tried 2 years ago, that one was a little bit iffy. For me, when I wore it in the winter and I wasn't as chocolatey and rich as I am right now, it worked out. But then sometimes if I tried to wear it in the summer and my skin tone was a little bit darker, a little bit more tanned, there was a ever so slight cast. This one, I think it should work well. Well, this one is working well this summer as far as not leaving a cast with my skin tone. And I think in the winter time, when I'm just a little bit lighter, it should also work as well. So obviously, if you lean towards the more porcelain end of the spectrum and you have kind of pale skin, I don't think the lightly tinted or the richly tinted is gonna work for you, because the lightly tinted has a slight tan, almost orange tint to it. So it's gonna be a little bit too dark for you. And then if you lean all the way on the other end where you have a super dark complexion, I feel like this should work, but there's obviously the potential that the richly tinted might still be too light for you. So I don't think my opinion changed too much from 2 years ago, but it was kind of nice to get back to a sunscreen that I really liked and give another full review of it. So that's it for today's video. Don't forget to give this a thumbs up. If you've tried the COTZ Flawless Complexion Vanishing Zinc Oxide Mineral Sunscreen, either in the lightly tinted or the richly tinted, let us know your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you really liked it, we'd love to hear it. If you're not a fan, we'd still love to hear it. And that'll be it for today's video. Don't forget to leave your sunscreen recommendations as always, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye!